For 33 years, I thought my biggest fear was losing my family. I was wrong. The real horror is discovering you never really had one in the first place. It started with a photo. That's how these things always seem to start now, isn't it? Not with a bang, but with a scroll. Innocent enough, right? I was up late, couldn't sleep. Work had been stressful, and I was doing that thing we all do, just mindlessly flicking through social media, letting the lives of others wash over me. I was on my mom's Instagram feed. She loves it. It's her little window to the world, full of pictures of her garden, our family dog, and, well, our family. And that's when I saw it. A picture of her, my dad, Richard, and my older brother, Ethan. They were at the Oak Room, our favorite family restaurant, the one we go to for every big celebration. Birthdays, anniversaries, graduations. They were all raising a glass of wine, big, beaming smiles on their faces, the kind of smiles you can't fake. The lighting was warm, golden. They looked so happy, so complete. Underneath, the caption read, "Another wonderful family night. So blessed." Another. That was the word that snagged in my mind. Another wonderful family night. Because I remembered seeing a similar photo about a month before. Same place, different outfits, same 3 people. The first time, I'd felt a little sting. A prickle of something. Hurt, I guess. But I'd pushed it down. I'd rationalized it. It must have been a last-minute thing. Ethan probably just dropped by unexpectedly and they decided to grab a bite. They know how busy I am with work. They probably just didn't want to bother me. I'd convinced myself it was a slip-up, an oversight. I'd even commented on it, something bright and cheerful to show I wasn't bothered. But the second time, seeing that second photo with that word, another, that's not a mistake. That's not a slip-up. That's a pattern. That's a choice. That's a secret. My heart started doing this slow, heavy thudding in my chest. It felt cold. I was looking at a picture of the 3 people I loved most in the world, and I felt like I was looking at strangers. Strangers who had a whole life I knew nothing about. I typed out a comment, my fingers feeling clumsy and thick. "Looks lovely. Wish I could have been there." I stared at it for a long time before I hit post. It felt so hopeful and so profoundly pathetic. Like a little kid tapping on the glass, wanting to be let inside. I put my phone down on the nightstand, but I couldn't look away from the screen. The picture glowed in the dark, a perfect little portrait of a family I was suddenly no longer a part of. So, the next morning, I did what any daughter would do. I called my mom. I rehearsed it in my head a few times, trying to find the right tone. I didn't want to sound accusatory. I didn't want to sound hurt. I wanted to sound casual, breezy, like it was no big deal. "How are you?" "Clara, honey, so good to hear from you. Everything's fine here. Just enjoying this beautiful weather." We went through the usual pleasantries. The weather, her garden, my work. Every second felt like an eternity. I just wanted to get to it. Finally, I took the plunge. "So," I said, trying to make it sound like an afterthought, "I saw the photo you posted from the Oak Room last night. Looked like you guys had a fun time." The pause on her end wasn't long, just a beat. But in that single beat, I felt the lie being constructed. It was like hearing the click of a lock falling into place. And then the lie came. And it was so smooth, so practiced, so effortless. It stole my breath away. "Oh, honey, that," she said with a little dismissive laugh. "It was completely spontaneous. Honestly, your brother just popped by on his way home from a client meeting, and you know your father, once he gets a craving for their steak, there's no stopping him. We didn't even think to call you. We just figured you were swamped with that big project at work. We didn't want to bother you." Busy. The word hung in the air between us. We didn't want to bother you. It's such a clever phrase, isn't it? On the surface, it sounds considerate, caring even. They're thinking of me. of my stressful job. But underneath, it's poison. I'm the one who plans our family vacations down to the last detail. I'm the one who sets up a recurring flower delivery for her wedding anniversary because I know Dad will forget. I'm the one who orchestrates every single holiday gathering. The "you're so busy" line wasn't an excuse, it was a weapon. It's the thing you say to someone when you want to make the exclusion their fault. You're not being left out, you're just unavailable. It absolves them of all guilt and places the blame squarely on your shoulders. I didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight. "Oh," was all I could manage. "Well, looks like you had a great time." "We did, honey. We'll all have to go together soon, okay? Love you." "Love you too, Mom," I whispered, and I hung up the phone. I stood there in the middle of my apartment, the morning sun streaming in, and I felt colder than I'd ever felt in my life. She was lying. I knew it with a certainty that was bone deep. The question was, why? I tried to let it go. I swear I did. For the next couple of days, I threw myself into work. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was reading too much into it. My brother even called, and he was so charming, so normal. "Heard you were feeling a bit left out," he'd said with a light chuckle. "Mom said you called." "Don't be silly, sis. It was just a random thing. We'll do a proper family dinner soon, promise." He made me feel foolish for even worrying. Maybe I was just being dramatic. Maybe I was just tired and stressed. But that feeling, that cold, hard knot that had formed in my stomach, it wouldn't go away. It's a primal instinct, I think. The feeling that your pack is moving on without you, it doesn't lie. And then the proof came. It came a few days later, and it was completely, utterly by accident. It's funny how the biggest truths in your life can be revealed in the most mundane moments. My dad had gotten a new tablet for his birthday, and he was completely lost. "Clara, you're the tech wizard," he'd said on the phone. "Can you come over and show your old man how this thing works?" I was happy to. I've always been close to my dad. He's the quiet one, the gentle one. Where my mom is the family's glittering, sociable sun, my dad has always been the calm, steady moon. I felt safe with him. So there I was, sitting at their dining room table, showing him how to download his favorite newspaper app. He was beaming, so pleased with it. "I'm just gonna go grab us some coffee," he said, getting up from his chair. "You want one?" "Of course," I smiled. "Thanks, Dad." He left the room, leaving the tablet and his unlocked phone on the table in front of me. I was just tapping on the tablet, setting up his email, when his phone buzzed and the screen lit up. A text message banner appeared at the top of the screen. It was from Helen, my mom. My eyes flickered to it, just out of habit, and then I read the words, "Stick to the story." 3 words. 3 words that shattered everything. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't an oversight because I was busy. It was a story, a pre-planned, coordinated lie, a conspiracy. My own mother and father, my own family, were coordinating lies about me, to me. The spontaneous dinner wasn't the event. The event was the lie they were telling me. The casual phone call I'd had with my mom hadn't been a conversation. It had been an interrogation to see if their story was holding. He walked back into the room, holding 2 mugs of coffee, a warm, completely oblivious smile on his face. "Here we go," he said, setting a mug down in front of me. "One for my favorite daughter." Suddenly, I wasn't just the daughter who was left out. I was the detective in a mystery where I was also the victim. And in that moment, looking at my father's kind, lying face, I realized my family didn't just have a secret, my family was a secret. The question was, what on earth were they hiding? Have you ever caught someone you love in a lie that just completely changed how you saw them? A lie so big it made you question everything? Let me know in the comments below.
I feel like I really need to know I'm not alone in this. After that day at my parents' house, something inside me shifted. The hurt was still there, a deep, aching bruise on my heart, but underneath it, a new feeling was taking root. A cold, hard resolve. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to get answers. My first strategy was to try direct confrontation again, but this time armed with the knowledge that I knew they were lying.
I thought maybe if they knew that I knew, the whole charade would just collapse. I was wrong. It was like trying to punch through a brick wall that just kept rebuilding itself. I started with my dad. I waited a couple of days, then I went over to their house again, this time unannounced. He was in the garage, tinkering with his lawnmower. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, "we need to talk about that dinner." He visibly flinched. He wouldn't look at me. He kept his eyes on a greasy engine part in his hand. "Clara, your mother already explained. It was just a spur-of-the-moment thing." "No, it wasn't," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I know you guys had a story you were supposed to stick to. I know you were told not to engage. So I'm asking you, Dad, I'm asking you to just tell me the truth. Why are you lying to me?" I saw him crumble. It was a physical thing. His shoulders slumped, the color drained from his face. He looked old and tired and trapped. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked like he was suffocating. Finally, he just shook his head, still not meeting my eyes. "The petunias are looking a bit wilted, aren't they?" he mumbled, turning away from me and busying himself with a watering can. "Must be this heat." He just checked out. The man I'd always seen as my rock had just dissolved into sand right in front of me. So I tried Ethan, my older brother, the golden child. He'd always been the charming one, the one who could talk his way out of anything. I called him that night. "Ethan, I know what's going on," I said, skipping the pleasantries. "I know you're all lying to me about these dinners. Just tell me why." He didn't miss a beat. His voice was smooth as silk, laced with a kind of patronizing affection that set my teeth on edge. "Clara, Clara, Clara," he sighed, like he was dealing with a hysterical child. "You're overthinking things. You've always been so dramatic, you know that? You take everything so personally. We love you. Of course we love you. Can't a few people just grab a bite to eat without it turning into a federal investigation?" And that was even crueler than my dad's silence. He didn't just lie to me, he tried to make me feel crazy for questioning the lie. He used my love for them, my desire to be part of the family, and twisted it, painting me as this paranoid, unstable little sister who was manufacturing drama out of thin air. It was classic gaslighting, and it was devastatingly effective. For a moment, I actually wavered. Was I being crazy? Was I the problem here? I hung up the phone, my hands shaking with anger and a horrible, creeping self-doubt. That was my turning point. I realized that direct confrontation was completely useless. They had their story, they had their defenses, and they were all aligned. Pushing them head-on was like running into a shield wall. They would just close ranks and push me back, making me feel worse, more isolated, more insane. I had to find another way in. A side door they hadn't thought to guard. When your own family unit turns on you, when they decide you're the one who has to be kept on the outside, you have two choices. You can give up and accept your exile, or you can find a new ally. You can try to build a new tribe. And that's when I remembered my Aunt Carol. Aunt Carol is my mom's younger sister. When I was a kid, she was my favorite. She was fun and loud, and she never treated me like a child. She told me secrets and let me stay up late watching scary movies when she babysat. But about 10 years ago, she just disappeared from our lives. There was a huge falling out. My mom's version of the story was always vague but damning. She'd say Carol was difficult, that she was too nosy, that she caused drama and couldn't keep her opinions to herself. At the time, I just accepted it.
But now, with the words "stick to the story" echoing in my head, I was starting to see my mom's vocabulary in a new light. I was starting to think that nosy was just what my mom called someone who asked questions she didn't want to answer, and drama was what she called the truth. My mom didn't like people who didn't stick to her story, and Carol, I realized, had probably refused. My heart was pounding. It was a long shot. They hadn't spoken in a decade. What if Carol hated me by association? What if she told me to get lost? But it was the only lead I had. I found her on social media. Her profile was private, but her picture was a recent one. She looked older, of course, tired. But there was still a spark in her eyes, a defiance that I recognized. I took a deep breath, and I wrote the message. "Hi, Aunt Carol. It's Clara. I know it's been a very long time, but I'm in some trouble with the family, and I have nowhere else to turn. They're lying to me, and I think you're the only one who might tell me the truth." I hit send, my stomach twisting into a tight knot. I expected to wait for days or to never get a reply at all, but my phone buzzed less than a minute later. A new message had arrived. The message was short, but it sent a jolt through my entire body. It read, "I've been waiting for you to call for years. Meet me tomorrow. The Daily Grind coffee shop at noon. It's about Ethan. It's always been about Ethan." As I sat there watching her, my heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. I felt like I was about to finally get the answers I was so desperate for. But there was a cold dread coiling in my gut, a voice whispering that the truth wasn't going to set me free. Not yet. Part of me knew even then that the truth was going to be so much worse than being left out of a few dinners. It was going to burn everything to the ground. Walking into that coffee shop felt like stepping into another life. The smell of roasted beans and steamed milk was so normal, so everyday, but my world was about to be tilted on its axis. Aunt Carol saw me the moment I walked in. She gave me a small, sad smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Clara," she said, her voice a little rougher than I remembered. "You've grown up." "Hi, Aunt Carol," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I sat down opposite her, my hands trembling slightly as I placed them on the table. There was no small talk, no catching up on the last 10 years. She seemed to know we didn't have time for that. She took a sip of her black coffee and looked me straight in the eye. "Your mother and I?" she began. "We didn't have a falling out because I was difficult. We had a falling out because I refused to lie for your brother, and they have been lying for him ever since." And then, she told me everything. The story Carol told me? It wasn't about me. It had never been about me. And somehow that hurt more than anything else. My brother, Ethan, my charming, successful, golden boy brother with the perfect career and the perfect life. It was all a lie. A carefully constructed facade that my parents had been bankrolling for years. Ethan was a gambling addict, a severe one. It started small, she said. Online poker in college, a few trips to Vegas with his friends that he couldn't really afford. But it had spiraled, growing into a monster that was consuming everything in its path. He hadn't just lost his savings, he'd lost everything. He'd maxed out over a dozen credit cards, he'd taken out high-interest personal loans from shady online lenders, he'd borrowed money from friends and never paid it back, burning every bridge he had. The reason he'd sold his condo a few years ago wasn't to upgrade to a bigger place like he'd told me. It was to cover a massive debt, and he'd gambled all of that money away too. And then came the part that made me feel physically ill. Carol looked at me, her eyes full of a pained pity. "Carol," she said gently, "do you remember last year when your parents told you they were remortgaging the house to do a big kitchen upgrade?" I nodded slowly, my blood turning to ice. I remembered. I'd even been excited for them. Mom had been wanting a new kitchen for years. Carol shook her head. There was no kitchen upgrade. They remortgaged their home, the home you grew up in, to pay off a loan shark. Someone who had come to their door, Someone who had threatened Ethan and threatened them. I couldn't breathe. The secret dinners? They suddenly clicked into place with horrifying clarity. They weren't celebrations. They were crisis meetings. They were damage control sessions. They were frantic, whispered conferences with lawyers and financial advisors, trying to figure out how to navigate the absolute ruin he had brought upon them. They weren't excluding me to be cruel. They were excluding me because they were ashamed. They were trying to hold together this shattered illusion of a perfect family, and I was the one person who still believed the illusion was real.
They couldn't have me at the table, asking innocent questions that would bring the whole house of cards crashing down. I finally understood. I understood the lies, the secrecy, the desperation in my dad's eyes. But the worst part was yet to come. The final, devastating betrayal. "There's more," Carol said, her voice heavy. "The reason they started having these meetings again, the reason the secrecy has been so intense lately, it's because the money has finally, completely run out. They're at the bottom of the barrel, and your mother, Helen, she came up with a new plan." She took out her phone and slid it across the table to me. It was open to a text conversation between her and my dad from about a month ago. My dad, my quiet, gentle dad, had clearly been confiding in his estranged sister-in-law, a sign of his own desperation. I read the last message he'd sent her. My own mother. My own mother's plan? It wasn't just to hide the truth from me. It was to groom me, to prepare me, to set the stage for the biggest lie of all. They weren't just excluding me from their nightmare. They were planning to drag me into it. My entire adult life, I had worked so hard. I had been so careful with my money. I'd built a career, a savings account, a stable life for myself. I was proud of it. I thought they were proud of me. And I realized in that moment that they looked at my success, my stability, my life, and they didn't see a daughter to be proud of. They saw a resource. They saw a solution. They saw an emergency fund with a heartbeat, a lifeboat. The secret dinners, the lies about me being busy, the compliments about my career, it was all part of it. Building me up, making me feel successful and capable while simultaneously isolating me so that when they finally sprang the trap, I would feel a desperate need to reconnect, to prove my love, to be the savior. They were going to ambush me. They were going to sit me down at one of their family dinners and emotionally manipulate me into taking on a six-figure debt to pay for my brother's addiction, a debt that would cripple me for the rest of my life. I looked up from the phone, my vision blurred with tears. I felt hollowed out, like someone had reached inside me and scooped out everything I thought was true. I left the coffee shop in a daze. I don't remember saying goodbye to Carol. I don't remember the drive home. I just remember sitting on my sofa in my silent apartment, the afternoon light fading outside, feeling the full weight of the betrayal settle over me. It wasn't just about a gambling problem anymore. It was about the fact that my family saw my love as something to be leveraged and my life as something to be sacrificed. The ambush was on. The invitation had arrived. They were ready to spring their trap. But what they didn't know is that I was no longer the unsuspecting victim. I was no longer the guest of honor. I was the hunter. I accepted the invitation. My reply was prompt, warm, and exactly what they would have expected from the loving, unsuspecting daughter they thought they had. "That sounds wonderful, Mom. I've been missing you guys. Can't wait for Sunday." I put a little heart emoji at the end for good measure. I could almost feel the collective sigh of relief from their end of the line. Their plan was working. Their target was acquired. For the next 2 days, I lived a double life. On the outside, I played the part. I answered their calls, I was cheerful, I asked what I could bring for dinner. But on the inside, a cold, quiet fury was fueling me. This wasn't about sadness anymore. It was about strategy. For 2 days, I gathered my ammunition. I wasn't just gonna walk into their trap. I was gonna build a better one. They were coming to this dinner with a story. I was coming with the truth. They were coming with an ask for money. I was coming with a non-negotiable offer. They thought they were staging an intervention for their finances. I was staging an intervention for their souls. When Sunday arrived, I felt strangely calm. The nervousness was gone, replaced by a crystalline focus. I chose my outfit carefully, a simple, professional-looking dark blue dress. It was my armor. I drove to my parents' house, the same route I'd driven 1,000 times before. But this time, every familiar landmark looked different. The friendly neighborhood streets felt like enemy territory. The cheerful family home at the end of the cul-de-sac looked like the lion's den. I walked in and the performance began immediately. "Clara, honey, you look beautiful," my mom gushed, hugging me a little too tightly. "It's so good to have you here, sweetie," my dad said, his smile looking brittle and strained. Ethan was the most convincing. He was charming, attentive, asking about my work, complimenting my dress. He was playing the part of a concerned brother to perfection. The dinner itself was a masterclass in artificiality. The food was delicious, but no one seemed to be tasting it. The laughter was a little too loud, the compliments a little too frequent. It was all a preamble, a carefully constructed stage play designed to soften me up before the main act. I played my part too. I smiled, I laughed, I asked about their weeks. I let them think they were in complete control. And then, after the main course plates had been cleared, it came, the shift. My mom put her fork down on her dessert plate with a soft clink. She looked at my dad a small, significant glance. The mood in the room dropped 10 degrees. The show was about to begin. My dad started, his voice heavy with false sincerity. He cleared his throat. "Clara, there's something we need to talk to you about, as a family." He talked vaguely about a bad investment that Ethan had made, how he'd been taken advantage of by some unscrupulous people. He painted a picture of Ethan as a victim, someone who made a simple mistake that had snowballed. Then it was my mom's turn. The waterworks started right on cue. Her eyes welled up with tears as she talked about the stress, the sleepless nights, the fear of losing their home. "We just don't know what to do, honey," she sobbed, reaching for my hand across the table. "We've tried everything." And Ethan? He just sat there, looking down at his hands, the very picture of shame and pathetic regret. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His silence was part of the performance. The broken son, crushed by the weight of his failure. They laid it all out. The carefully edited story, the emotional manipulation, the web of half-truths and outright lies. And then finally came the ask, the whole point of the evening. My dad looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Clara, you're our only hope," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We need to get a consolidation loan to put all this behind us, but with our situation, the bank won't approve it without a co-signer. We need your help." My mom squeezed my hand, her grip like a vice. "It's a 6-figure loan, honey, but you're the only one who can save this family, the only one who can keep us all together." I let the silence hang in the air for a long, long time. I let it stretch and grow, filling the room until it was almost unbearable. I let them sit in the ugliness of their own lies, marinating in the performance they had just given. I watched the hope drain from their eyes, replaced by confusion,
then a flicker of fear. This is a great performance, really. Bravo to all of you. But let's cut the bullshit. Let's talk about why we're really here. Let's talk about your gambling, Ethan. The moment those words left my mouth, the carefully constructed reality in that dining room shattered into a million pieces. It was like a dam breaking. The first reaction was denial, spearheaded by my mother. "How dare you?" she shrieked, her tears of manipulation instantly turning into tears of pure rage. She shot up from her chair. "How dare you come into this house and make such a disgusting accusation? After everything we've done for you?" My dad just looked like he'd been punched in the gut. All the fight went out of him. He sank back into his chair, his face ashen, the picture of shame. And Ethan? Ethan was stunned into absolute silence. His mask of the pathetic victim had been ripped away, and what was left underneath was just blank, shocked, exposed. The room erupted into chaos. My mom was yelling, calling me ungrateful, vicious. Ethan started stammering, trying to deny it, but the words wouldn't come out right. It was the predictable, messy, emotional explosion I had anticipated, and I refused to take part in it. I let my mother's rage wash over me. I let her scream until she ran out of breath. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just sat there, waiting, because I knew this wasn't going to be a screaming match. They had lost control of the narrative, and I was not going to let them get it back.
This was going to be an intervention. When the shouting finally subsided into heaving sobs from my mother, I calmly reached down and took a simple manila folder out of my purse. I placed it on the table with a soft thud that silenced the entire room. "I know everything," I said, my voice still quiet, but now it carried an undeniable weight of authority that none of them had ever heard from me before. "I know about the credit cards. I know about the secret loans. I know the real reason you remortgaged this house. I know about the loan shark." I paused, and then I looked directly at my mother, whose face had drained of all color. "And I know that you spoke to Aunt Carol. That was the kill shot." The mention of Carol's name confirmed their worst fear. Their conspiracy had a leak. Their wall of silence had been breached. The game was over. My mother sank back into her chair, looking utterly defeated. "And I know," I continued, my gaze sweeping over all three of them, "that your plan tonight was to manipulate me into co-signing a loan that would financially ruin me to enable his addiction." The ugly truth was finally laid bare on the dining room table, and no one could look away. And then I delivered my terms, my act of revenge. It wasn't going to be about hurting them. It wasn't going to be about making them pay in the way they understood. It was going to be about ending this rotten cycle once and for all. I pushed the papers I had printed across the table towards Ethan. "This," I said, tapping the top page, "is a brochure for what is considered the best inpatient gambling addiction treatment center in the state. It's a 30-day program." I slid another paper over to my parents. "And this is a list of family therapists who specialize in addiction and enabling. I've highlighted 3 of the best ones." I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands on the table. This was the turning point. This was my revenge. "I will not give you 1 single cent," I said, looking Ethan dead in the eye. "My money will not be a shovel for you to dig this hole any deeper. My life will not be the collateral damage for your disease. But here is what I will do." I looked at all of them, my voice hard as steel. "I have already spoken to the admissions director at this facility. I have already paid the deposit for a 30-day inpatient gambling addiction treatment center for Ethan. The bed is waiting for him. I have an appointment scheduled for next Tuesday with the top-rated family therapist on that list for you, Mom and Dad, to begin to deal with your decades of enabling. This is my offer. Not money, help. Real, structured, professional help. You either take it and we begin the long, painful process of trying to become a real family again, or you don't,
And if you don't, you can consider this the last time you will ever see or hear from me. Your choice. The fallout was instantaneous and profound. The power dynamic in that room didn't just shift, it was fundamentally inverted. It was a tectonic event.
For the first time in my entire life, I wasn't the little sister, the daughter, the one begging for a seat at the table. I was the one who owned the table, the chairs, the entire goddamn room. Ethan, to my shock, broke down. Not the pathetic, manipulative crying from before, but deep, ragged, gut-wrenching sobs. It was a sound of both profound shame and, I think, a sliver of profound relief. The pressure of keeping up the lie was finally gone. My dad, tears streaming down his own face, just nodded slowly over and over again, unable to speak. And my mother just stared at me. Her expression was a terrifying mixture of fury, shock, and disbelief. She wasn't looking at a daughter who had saved them. She was looking at the person who had taken away her control, and she couldn't stand it. I stood up from the table. My legs felt steady. "I'll wait for your call," I said to the room at large. And then I turned around and I walked out of that house. I walked past the family photos on the wall, past the ghosts of 1,000 happier, more ignorant memories. I got in my car. I didn't look back. This was the hardest decision of my life, to issue an ultimatum to the people I was supposed to love unconditionally. So I have to ask you, do you think I did the right thing? Was this revenge or was it rescue? I honestly still grapple with that question every single day. The days after that dinner were the loudest silence I have ever experienced. I didn't block their numbers, but I didn't reach out. I had made my offer and the ball was in their court. Part of me, a small, terrified part, was convinced they would choose their pride, their dysfunction, their secrets. I prepared myself for the possibility that I had just walked away from my family forever. I spent those first few weeks in a state of suspended animation, waiting for a verdict on my entire life. Then, about a week later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my dad. It wasn't a magic fix. There was no grand, tearful reunion where everything was suddenly okay. The first few weeks were just those terse, factual updates from my dad. My mom didn't contact me at all. I learned through my dad that she was having the hardest time in therapy, struggling to accept her role as an enabler. My relationship with her is a work in progress, a long, long one. There are some betrayals that take more than a few therapy sessions to heal. Maybe they never fully do, but my dad and I started talking on the phone. At first, it was awkward, but slowly we found a new way of communicating, a more honest way. For the first time, he started talking to me not as his little girl who needed protecting, but as an adult, as an equal. He apologized, a real apology this time. Not for the situation, but for his own weakness in it, for not standing up for me, for not telling the truth sooner. And in that, we started to build something new. Ethan came home after 30 days. He called me. It was the hardest phone call of my life. He didn't ask for forgiveness, he just owned it, all of it. The lies, the theft, the manipulation. He told me he was starting a 12-step program, that he was going to meetings every single day. He said that my ultimatum, as harsh as it was the first time anyone had ever offered him a way out instead of just another way to hide. He said I saved his life. I still don't know how I feel about that. The true turning point for me, the real catharsis, wasn't that my family was suddenly fixed. It was the slow, dawning realization that I was finally free. I was free from the desperate need for their approval. I was free from the role they had cast me in. I was free from the crushing weight of their secrets. My happiness was no longer contingent on getting a seat at their broken table. For so long, I was desperate to be included in my family's secret dinners.
I thought that table at the Oak Room was the most important one in the world. I thought being invited to it was the ultimate measure of my worth, of their love. But I learned that sometimes the family you're born into isn't the one that's meant to sustain you. Sometimes their love is conditional, and their table is built on a foundation of secrets and lies. And sometimes you have to be the one brave enough to walk away. Sometimes you have to burn down the old, rotting table so you have space to build your own.